I'm Escambia County Sheriff David Morgan, and thank you for watching Ask the Sheriff. This is your chance to ask me any questions you want answered about the ECSO. Our team hits the streets again, and here are some of the questions you asked. The question was that someone's noted that we have chaplains, and what do they do at the sheriff's office? You actually have chaplains throughout law enforcement, not just on the patrols and operational side, but you also have it on the correction side. Chaplains serve a function of basically what any pastor or minister does. They're there to comfort officers. They're there for counseling. Not just religious, but sometimes marital counseling. It can go into areas that are not necessarily, religious, but sometimes can even be secular. So, they are members of the sheriff's office, volunteers, by the way, unpaid, and they are there for, spiritual, emotional, and mental uplifting for our officers. And almost all agencies of any size have staff chaplains. The question has been posed as, what is sheriff, am I proud of as, being sheriff and what I've accomplished, etc. And again, I would, modify that to tell you that, it's not about I, it's about we. I'm very, very proud of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office during my administration and all the fine men and women that work here, both in uniform and in all of our administrative functions that support us. This is about a team. It's not about any one individual effort, and that's what teamwork and serving a community is all about. And I don't think there's any one instance, if you will, when we're all very honest with ourselves, that you can point to and say, "Boy, look at what I accomplished," or "Look at what I have done." There isn't any I in any of this. It's about leading a very professional organization that shares the common goal that you have, and that's providing for the protection of the citizens of Escambia County and creating an environment that supports education and supports families and enhances businesses to come to our community so our quality of life can be raised. So, I guess the answer to your question is I'm proud of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and I'm proud of everything that they have accomplished, and I think that's probably the extent of that answer. Okay, Mr. Salas asked the question of what are we doing to enforce the no texting laws? Mr. Salas, I had my staff research this, and there was initially some confusion. We thought the law had passed that would allow that to be what's referred to as a primary reason for a stop, meaning, I see you texting, and so therefore I can stop. It's only, part of what's called a secondary thing. So if we see you without a seatbelt, if you're crossing a center line, etc., there has to be a primary reason for the stop. That it would be the primary reason. And then, oh, by the way, we also observed that you had a cell phone in your hand, you were texting or you were dialing a number or whatever the case may be. So it's very, very difficult to, make a stop, if you will, for texting unless there's some other reason for the traffic stop to occur. And so, I think that's is the answer to your question. It's not something I think that we all agree with. I know that I'm a motorcycle rider, and the two times that I've come close to being hit by a car was because of texting. So, I understand your frustration and, you're concerned about texting. I think we all are. I would strongly encourage you to get a hold of your legislator, both in the Florida Senate and the House, and let them know that, what you consider to be an issue with cell phone usage in moving vehicles is something that needs to be addressed. And I can tell you that you would have the support of law enforcement along those lines too. We have a question from a citizen asks, what are the goals for the sheriff's office in this term, my third term as the sheriff? They're pretty broad and far-reaching. We've reorganized the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. We've opened a significant number of promotion possibilities. We're creating a public relations section here, which you watching this video is part of our public relations section. A lot of people say, well, why do you need a PR firm at the Sheriff's Office? It sounds like that's a little self-serving. Well, if you follow the news throughout the nation today, we do need a public relations section, and the reason for that is to get our message out there. And so we launched the ECSO News. We launched the Ask the Sheriff program. We do billboards. So we do a lot of community outreach to ensure the message of the sheriff's office is out there, and that our hashtag is Facts Matter. And so we're trying to make sure that the truth of any incident that occurs here, especially those which tend to be controversial, that they're fully vetted and fully aired, with the intent of, again, getting all the facts out to the public. Technology is another area. We're continuing to upgrade those things in law enforcement that assist us, in capturing the bad people that would bring harm to our community. So, it's pretty broad ranging at the sheriff's office. One thing that I can say about this business is it's ever changing. You can't stand in one place. If you do, the world, kind of passes you by. And so many times it's frustrating. One of the previous questions was about, drugs and drug dealing. Right now, opiates are the drug of choice. I can tell you that, in 6 months or a year, depending upon the price of opiates, it'll just morph into some new drug, because again, this is a society problem, not a law enforcement problem. And so we'll continually, chase those sorts of behaviors that our community develops, unfortunately, that bring harm to the vast majority. In law enforcement, it's our job to try to slow and or stop it as best we can. So, goals, sometimes, I tell folks I feel like the little boy with the dike story where, there was a leak in the dike and he stuck his finger in. I worry that we don't run out enough fingers and toes to plug the dike. So, we've got a very professional force here at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Our recruitment and standards are high. So we look forward to the future. We're very honored to be in this profession, honored to be a service to our community, and so we just look forward to a brighter future. And Escambia County has turned the corner in so many areas, and this is one. We have a community that has bonded with the Sheriff's Office in Escambia County. That's why, as I said to a previous question, we're seeing some all-time lows of crime in Escambia County. Actually, my Chief Deputy Eric Haynes for admin's running the numbers. We're like at a 20-year low. So it's huge what your Sheriff's Office has done, and I say done in conjunction with the support of the citizens of Escambia County. Question is how often is the SWAT team used, and what kind of instances are they called out or called to? There's no specific number. The SWAT team is called out on a case-by-case basis. On the shift level, we've said that supervisors, meaning sergeants and above, can request a SWAT call out. They're there specifically for extraordinary circumstances, meaning we have a barricaded suspect. Sometimes because our environment is so violent, especially in the drug trade, because we're dealing with people that are on narcotics, who are selling narcotics. They may be, I say maybe, most of the time they are, unfortunately, former felons who don't want to return to jail. So the simple act of serving a warrant, which at one time a patrol officer would literally go to a house and knock on the door, and someone would answer, and they'd serve an arrest warrant and take somebody into custody. Today our society is so violent. That's a very rare instance now where some of your basic warrants are not served without SWAT team backup. So there is no specific number. I remember my first couple of months in office in 2009. I think in the first 5-month or 6-month period, we had 5 or 6 SWAT call-outs. We were averaging 1 a month. We have gone 6, 8, 10 months without any SWAT call-outs. So again, it's specifically driven by the need for that extra deployment, extra armament, and again, it's about officer and community safety. So there's no affixed number to that. It's incident driven. Yeah, Jeremy asks, somewhat satirically, Jerry, and I appreciate satire, so how about that? Says, why don't you spend more time busting dope dealers that everyone knows where they are, instead of holding cookouts for them? Well, Jeremy, number one, I don't think we've held a cookout for drug dealers in Escambia County since I've been sheriff, although that would be a unique approach. Maybe we need to give that a try. But what you're looking at, Jeremy, is overall community policing, which is community outreach, and that's bonding with your community. If we show a personal face of the deputies in Escambia County and they get to know who law enforcement is, we're relationship building. And that's what all community policing is about, meaning that the community now can put a face to a name of officers and they're much more comfortable in communicating with us because we have developed a personal relationship. Now, getting back to, why don't we, spend time busting dope dealers? Jeremy, we do. I will tell you that 2/3, let me repeat that number, 2/3 of the crime activity now in our society is committed indoors, not out in public. While you still occasionally see the dope dealer standing on the street corner, normally they're only out there because somebody's going to swing by and make a pickup. The deal was actually consummated, if you will, by phone, some minutes prior or hours prior, and someone's now just swinging by to pick up their delivery, if you will. Crime in Escambia County, we're running the stats right now, is at some of its all-time lows, about a 20-year low. What you're seeing is this tsunami, if you will, of opiate activity, and of course it still involves meth and crack cocaine and some of the other drugs, that our entire society and our entire nation is dealing with. The criminal activity involving drugs, Jeremy, is not a law enforcement problem, it's a societal problem. There's a desire for drugs. We're not importing the drugs and we're not selling the drugs as a law enforcement agency, but we've been tasked with trying to stem the flow and or stop it if possible. I'll be very blunt with you and tell you, we're not going to stop the drug trade in Escambia County. We can at best put brakes on it, but until our community decides that drug taking is not something that we want in our community, it will always continue. It's no different with prostitution. Why are there prostitutes? Is the prostitute the problem or is the John the problem? I will tell you that it's a market-driven business like everything is. If there's a desire there, someone will find a way to produce and provide the product that you want. In the case of prostitution, it's the illegal sex trade. In drugs, it's the high that we get from drugs. So again, while we endeavor to do the best that we can do in law enforcement in Escambia County, until we as a community decide that drug dealing and drug taking is something we'll no longer tolerate, this blight will always be with us. But I promise you, we're going to do and continue to do the best we can. Dale and Ann, we have two questions that came in over the email that basically are asking the same question about handicap parking. We're very fortunate. While your question obviously deals with a specific problem that you've identified, we don't get a lot of those calls. We just ran some statistics on that not too long ago. We have parking enforcement specialists, which are volunteers that work at no pay. We put them through a short training course here, about 2 weeks long. And they do wear uniforms and have badges. They're non-armed and non-sworn, by the way, which means they don't have powers of arrest. But they go out and monitor parking and they issue those citations. If you're in downtown Pensacola, so I'm not sure where your question was and what it applies to, the Downtown Improvement Board in the city of Pensacola, within the city proper, actually regulates those parking spaces if you park downtown. Again, I'm not sure what your locale is here. But if you see that occur the next time, we would ask that you have no contact with the person that's violating the parking space. If they don't have a, remember, you look for two things. Number one, a license plate on the back of the car that shows that it's a handicap plate, or they'll have a placard that they're to hang from the rear view mirror of the car. And that's so that an officer that responds can readily identify if the vehicle itself is authorized to park there. Again, do not confront or contact that person while it's laudable for you to question that when someone who's obviously able-bodied gets out of a car and walks into a business or a business establishment. We ask that you not do that. Get the license number and the make of the car. Give us a call. Now, if a uniformed officer has time and is not on a call, they'll actually come by, and of course they can also enforce parking. But we ask that you ask for a parking enforcement specialist to come by. That's their one sole mission, is to go out and issue these citations. And again, they're not going from call to call to call like law enforcement is. They could be responding to an armed disturbance, a domestic violence, a robbery in progress. Could be a whole host of things that they're responding to. The parking enforcement specialists are doing only that. So ask for that you have a parking issue that you need an officer to respond to. Give them the make and the license number of the vehicle, and we'll make contact with that individual as soon as possible. Trust me, I know how irritating it is to see an able-bodied person parked there, or someone who doesn't have any markings on the vehicle at all. What I find particularly irritating for me is is when someone's driving mom or dad's car, or they got a plate based upon their mother or father, and then they use that to get an easy parking space everywhere that they go. That's a perversion of the system too. Why? Because those spaces are meant for people who truly have a handicap, who have a walker or a cane, or have to use crutches, or if they have a wheelchair, so they can get in and use the wheelchair lift, out of a side door, etc. So it is irritating. That's unfortunately another sad commentary on the de-evolution of society, where we don't care enough about our fellow citizens or our fellow men and women that we would abuse that privilege. Jimmy asked about the Perdido Key substation and the closing of that substation and the reassignment of officers. Jimmy, unfortunately, and I can speak to this issue now because the campaign is over. Prior to this, I could not have mentioned that. That was a rumor that was started, and it was purely politics. I won't name names as to who started it. But unfortunately, as an elected official, I spend an inordinate amount of time correcting misinformation and basically hateful rumors. And that's one of those. What we've done for your substation, it's still open. The officers still work out of your substation. They go there to make calls, to write reports. And when they make arrests or citizen contact, you may be taken to the Perdido Key substation. What we do now for the north and south areas of Escambia County, where the dividing line is for north and south, all of our officers now muster at Precinct 3, which is down off of Gulf Beach Highway. Now all that means is that all the officers that work the south end of Escambia County, where you live, now all get together, get the same pass-ons, they get to work together, they get now to overlap all the key districts, and you in actuality have more officers working the Perdido Key area and available for response than you did prior to the structural change. Again, there's no truth to the rumor that you have less deputies out there. We've spoken to Commissioner Doug Underhill at great length about this. I know that he's also in some of the Facebook pages and some of the local blogs has even talked to the issue, that he's spoken to me directly about that, which is a true statement. We would never, Jimmy, and again, I always ask folks, if you kind of step back with many of these rumors that you hear and take a deep breath and think through the process, what would be the benefit and what would be the point to me to relieving Perdido Key of the current officers that they currently have? Crime doesn't stop in any area of Escambia County, and most assuredly not out in Perdido Key. So of what benefit would it be to me as the sheriff or to the citizens of Escambia County for me, again, to lessen the patrol coverage that you have out in Perdido Key? And the answer is nothing. I'm not about being politically spiteful. I've never done that, and I certainly am not going to start now. And I can assure you that you have as much or more coverage in Perdido Key than you did prior to this structural change. This went through a staffing process with my Chief Deputy, Eric Haynes, Commander Weston, who heads up the Patrol Division, down to Colonel Bain Custer, who is the OIC of all the patrol functions in Escambia County. This process was also implemented in the north end of the county, and we went through much of the same thing in the area of Cantonment, Molino, McDavid, and Century, where the citizens convinced themselves that because of a restructure, we were pulling deputies from their precincts. Crime stats are actually down in Escambia County for this year. So again, we're trying to revamp and restructure the Escambia County Sheriff's Office to make it more responsive to the citizens throughout our entire county. So bear with us. These are management and leadership decisions that we're making for the benefit of all the citizens of Escambia County. But again, I assure you, you have more patrol coverage in Perdido, not less. Amy asked the question about deputies responding to a 911 call and why does it take so long? Well, Amy, hopefully no longer than necessary, is obviously because when someone dials 911, it is some sort of emergency. But I will also tell you that each and every call that comes into our call center or our central dispatch is entered into a computer system from the moment that your telephone number comes up on this automated system. Our dispatchers assess the nature of your emergency, and that's actually a question that they ask you. That you've reached the 911 Emergency Operations Center, what is the nature of your emergency? And so dependent upon that, you may actually be on a priority list, meaning that are we answering higher priority calls when that one comes in? Higher priority calls obviously would involve a firearm or a deadly instrument, such as a knife or a blunt instrument. Is it a domestic violence situation? Have shots been fired, etc.? Those calls obviously go to the top of the list because they tell our deputies that there's a serious risk of loss of life or great bodily injury. And so just because you call 911, depending upon the nature of your emergency, it may not require an immediate response, meaning that you're watching a burglary occur or you've seen a drug deal go down. So that would be lower on the list, quite obviously, than one involving a firearm or, again, another deadly instrument which could lead to the loss of life. So we respond as quickly as possible. I will tell you, because of the expanse of Escambia County, we're over 700 square miles. There are many areas where if a deputy is available, depending upon the call load that they have, it can take a considerable amount of time to literally, what we say, traverse the county, go from one end to the other. So we do our best by establishing precincts throughout the county that shorten that response time. But we're not the city of Pensacola, where they have approximately 3 officers for to serve a population in a very confined geographic space of about 51,000. They have the luxury of putting 2 officers on scene anywhere in the city in 3 to 5 minutes. And I say that because I'm envious, because their response times are shorter because they have a much smaller confined geographic area. Escambia County is a very, very large county. We're the 14th largest sheriff's office in the state of Florida out of 67. And we service a population of 265,000. So last year we responded to calls that were right at 250,000 calls for service. So our deputies stay very, very busy. That's almost 1 for every man, woman, and child in Escambia County in 1 year's period. 1 year we actually responded to over 300,000 calls for service. So our deputies stay very, very busy in Escambia County. So again, if there's an issue though with the response and you think that it continues in your particular neighborhood or whatever, please give us a call and we'll look into this call personally.
What area do you feel like the Escambia County Sheriff's Office is lacking in, and how do you believe that we can improve that?
Anthony Turner asked about what at the Escambia County Sheriff's Office is lacking and what basically can we do to correct it. Like all law enforcement agencies, Anthony, throughout the United States, because of some national trends, over the last couple of years, specifically starting with Ferguson, Missouri, we are having a difficult time recruiting and retaining qualified people in law enforcement. And again, that's not unique to Escambia County. Recruiting is down 80% throughout the United States. Young men and young women are not wanting to make law enforcement a career. And in all fairness, careers in general. When I was growing up, the average person changed jobs 3 to 5 times. The average person now changes jobs 7 to 12 times throughout their lifetime. So again, the whole mindset on what's a career and not a career has changed dynamically, societally and culturally throughout the United States. That ripple effect causes us a tremendous amount of problems. So if you were to ask what's one of the largest problems that and probably the most serious problem, to be quite honest with you, within law enforcement itself that I'm facing is the recruitment and retention of qualified people. We have a very difficult time keeping pace with civilian industry, especially in the areas of computer crime. In that cyber area, starting jobs can be 60 to 75,000 a year. We get a computer individual here who's computer literate. We send them to all the schools and spend tens of thousands of dollars getting them trained up, and then many times we lose them to a state or federal agency, or more recently to many of our civilian counterparts. Navy Federal is an excellent example. And so again, people will go where the largest salary is. And so we're in a continual educational cycle, recruiting and retaining or attempting to retain qualified people, especially in the more technical areas. So, law enforcement as a whole across the board, whether it's domestic violence, drug enforcement, DUI, etc. Those are kind of part and parcel to things that we do that have ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys. We're very qualified and capable to handle those things, but we must have qualified people. And so I can't respond to the needs of the citizens if I don't have a very qualified and trained force of law enforcement professionals. So that's an issue that we're all working. This has been an item at many of the Florida Sheriff's Conferences. How do we combat that coming into the next decade to make sure that we can offset that and again recruit the highest caliber of people to law enforcement? Because this position is one of trust within our community. It requires a higher standard of character and integrity than the average citizen. Why? Because as I remind people daily, when we have law enforcement contact, and most citizens don't ever consider this, In the lease situation, my deputies are empowered to take your freedom from you in an arrest situation. You're placed in handcuffs and placed in a car, and you can be incarcerated. In the extreme situation, they're empowered to take your life in a life or death situation. So, that responsibility is a tremendous responsibility that people take on when they go into a career in law enforcement, and most people don't give pause to think about that. We in law enforcement, especially those of us that are the heads of agencies, think about that daily. And so that's probably my most challenging thing at the sheriff's office, is that recruitment and retention. Vincent asked, can anything be done about the traffic on 29 between Interstate 10 and 9 Mile? Vincent, excellent question. For those of us who live in Escambia County, traffic and traffic flow is an issue, especially for a county that's growing and is as robust as we are. We have so many businesses coming to Escambia County now, specifically Navy Federal, new housing projects going up in different areas, and so our community is dynamic and it is ever changing. And I appreciate your concern. Those of us who work traffic along with the Florida Highway Patrol share your concerns. However, Vincent, we're not the OPR, or the Office of Primary Responsibility, for traffic flow, or traffic engineering. I would recommend you call your county commissioner. That's in your case Commissioner Berry for District 5 in Escambia County. That area would be in his district. Also part of that is District 3, which is Commissioner Lumen May. Have them get with the Roads and Bridges folks in Escambia County. They in turn will coordinate with the Florida Department of Transportation for any state roads as well as county roads, and get a traffic engineering study going for you. I think you already have one going in that area. But again, I don't want to answer for the two commissioners or for those other agencies, because they are in fact the OPR for traffic and traffic flow. And so again, we share in your concerns and your frustrations with those traffic problems, but the Office of Primary Responsibility is those that I've just outlined.